Welcome to the Failed podcast. Thank you for tuning in. We have a great episode today. Javier from the Funky Panther is our guest. I'm looking forward to a great conversation with him. We're going to cover growing up. We're going to cover up how he grew up, what he's learned in life, a little bit about the podcast, and just kind of zoom in on some music things and, the things that define who Javier is. And we talk a little bit about the Funky Panther podcast. That's who he's a part of. And so thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe and help us continue in spreading the word in what we're doing here at the Failed podcast. And now, here's the interview. Hope you enjoy it. And so welcome everyone. Welcome to the Failed podcast. Here I am once again. We're going to knock out a great episode for you. Thank you for tuning in, supporting what we're doing here. And I hope that you're enjoying the interviews and talks that I'm just creating. And today we have a special guest, my brother from another mother. Javier is in the house from the Funky Panther podcast, all the way from Fort Worth, Texas. Thank you for coming in, Javier. How are you doing? Tell me something funny or interesting that you went through this week, and then we'll get the show rolling.
Something funny or interesting, which I don't know if I could talk about because I have something planned for Tuesday's episode. Me and
don't spill the beans.
Our guest this week is the TFTI podcast, which have had the conversation of what went on, but things are better, things are great, and we talked about this thing since it's Thanksgiving, and I think it's going to be kind of funny. I think hopefully we don't get canceled for it, but it'll be great. I've known those guys for a good minute, and they're really good guys, and I'm glad everything kind of smoothed over. I think things are fantastic back the way they were. I'm
looking forward to it. The first time around, I wanted to have you on. My goodness, it's so embarrassing. Like I pride myself on never being late. I'm always on time and ahead of schedule, and it's just something that I hold myself to, right? And that day, dude, I slept in. You came, and I missed it. I dropped the ball. I'm still dealing with it now. And I was like, Javier, please forgive me. And you were so nice, and you were like, it's all good. But I felt really bad. So thank you for accepting my second invitation. I thought you were going to prank me and say, I'm sleeping. I'm so asleep, but you came through. And so, again, guys, be on time. Do your thing. Keep true to your word.
Well, I mean, I told you, I understand, 100% understood what was going on, and I didn't fault you for it. And if anything, I was like, well, at least I got up early, and I worked down the street. I don't work too far from here, so I just went straight to work. And everything was great, man. But thank you for having me. I really appreciate that.
And so we're going to jump into your life. I'm interested to see how why they are the way they are. Mm-hmm. And a lot of our childhood, the way that we grew up, the way that we were parented, or just certain things that we went through, they kind of show in ourselves when we're older.
Correct.
So let's start there. Go back as far as you want to, whether it be a vivid memory, what was your home life like? How many siblings do you have? Are you the oldest, middle, youngest? And then that's it. The show is going.
Cool. I'm the second oldest in a family of, I have 7 brothers and sisters.
Oh, man.
And, growing up, it was just me and my older brother. My parents were still married at the time. And one of my earliest memories were actually coming here to where I work now. My dad would work late hours, and my mom would take us to the shop and drop off dinner or be around. And it's weird being over there now working and taking over. So it's kind of it's work is essentially kind of like my first memory when it comes to like my family.
When you grew up, if someone had to describe it, would they say that you were a funny kid? Were you a quiet kid, nervous? What kind of kid would someone describe you as?
My mom would say travieso.
Mm-hmm.
And
for those of you that don't know that, he was a menace. He would get into things. I mean, I there you go. That's our first connection, man. My mom would probably say the same thing about me. Tell me some of the stuff that you would get into that you your mom would be so mad, but y'all probably laugh about it now.
Laughing about it now, yeah. So whenever I was in preschool, we went to Esquivel over here off of Magnolia, and our babysitter lived maybe about a good mile and a half away. So we thought that they went home, and me and my brother, we used to do the folklorico practice, and nobody was in the auditorium. We left, and nobody was at the house. And so our babysitter's brother was there. We went in and watched the first Terminator movie, which as a preschooler you probably shouldn't. And come to find out, our mom and our teachers thought we got kidnapped, and so they called the cops.
Yeah.
And they were looking for us, and they finally they're like, "Did we check the house?" And so they go to our babysitter's house, and we're there, and my mom just spanked us, and it was just and looking back, it was funny. And they took us back to the school, and our teachers were there, and they were crying because they thought we were kidnapped. And that's not hijinks. That's just that's a major thing, I guess. So.
You know what's so funny? If you think back, if you compare it to now, and how fast information travels, that could have been a huge mess today. You would have been on CNN, they would have showed your picture, and been no,
this boy is missing.
It's on the other side of the world. But back then, it was so weird because information traveled so different that that big scare was okay, it was very small. You didn't make the milk carton, did you?
No. It was 1989, and at the time. But then now my mom tells a story. And she's like, well, they would have returned him anyway. They wouldn't have. They would get tired of him, and they'd say no, take him back. But it's the same thing happened to when I was younger. Mervyn's, whenever they had those big rings of clothing, I would hide in there. And the same thing, my dad and my mom, they thought I went missing. They spoke to the management to trying to find me everywhere, and then my mom tells it. She's like, "You just popped out and said boo," and it's
boo.
Just, yeah, exactly. I think I get the scar on to my forehead. That's exactly where I got it.
I tell my daughter, do not hide. And do not tell your cousins to ever hide in a store because it doesn't play the same anymore, And so the times have changed so much since we've grown up. I went to Esquivel, and I believe it was for preschool too. I went there for a little, so it's so crazy. I'm just drawing connections because I feel like me and you have it. I just haven't been able to figure out what they were, and yet that's another one. But cool. I know Esquivel quite well. What's something that because you went way back, so that tells me that you have a pretty good memory. And so what do you miss from back in the day? Because everyone always says, oh, the good old days and blah, blah, blah. And I get it. But what's something that you miss back then that you wish still existed, or that it kind of just gives you a laugh whenever you're down or something?
Man, you always see the memes of staying out until the porch light comes on, or hanging out with your friends all day until you got to go back in, having sleepovers, and we just stayed outside as much as we could. We would take our bikes to the bike trails when I lived in Crowley, and even play street hockey with some of the kids from the other streets, because at the time the Mighty Ducks were a big deal. And so we all played street hockey, which is weird because that's how I met Chad without meeting Chad. It's funny because
Chad is one of the three from the Funky Panther podcast. Sorry, continue.
But it was just funny. He would always talk about the kids he'd play with on the street over street hockey, and it was, oddly enough, it was us, me and my brother. And so it just kind of, it's weird how things come together.
So y'all didn't officially meet, y'all were just kind of running into each other?
Yeah.
Nice. Well, y'all three seem like y'all have had friendships for a long time. How long have you known Chad and Tim? We'll get into the pod stuff later, but I'm just curious.
I've known them since middle school.
Oh, okay.
My brother knew Chad first, but I'm sure Chad doesn't remember. It was in the 5th grade whenever we moved over here to the River Oaks area. Okay. But I've known both of them since the 6th, 7th grade.
Okay. So growing up, we all go through things. We all have challenges that kind of define us or define our homes, and obviously, with discretion and everything. But what are some of the obstacles that you went through that you remember that have made you a better man today? And maybe just as a family, y'all went through it, or what's some challenges or obstacles?
I mean, when you're a part of something big like the podcast, it's kind of you get your arguments on what you want to do, but thankfully there's like three of us, so it hasn't happened in a long time. But if we need to put a vote to something, then if two of us agree with one thing, then of course the other has to. It is what it is. It's just a part of that group vote. But it's good and it's fun because we haven't had to do that in a while. We usually just agree now more than ever that we agree with certain things that we want to do. Or, someone will chime in with an idea and, a lot of the time it's like, yeah, let's do it. Who cares? Let's do it. If it fails, then it fails. But, if it goes great, then perfect. If we fail, then we learn something new. Yeah. We learn what not to do.
It's so important. Like, I don't know where you get like inspiration or if you have mentors in your life, but who are those mentors in your life when you were growing up, middle school, high school, who really spoke into your life, gave you great advice that you recall now, and does it motivate you to kind of pass something down to the next generation as we become older and we have some of that knowledge that we've gained from growing up? Mm-hmm. Is there anyone that sticks out?
And so I honestly, like, I was a big crybaby. Like, I cried about everything. So it felt embarrassed, like, crying over stuff. But, my teachers, God bless them, and my counselors, because for one, they had to put up with all the mess that I put them through because I was a terrible child. I'll be open about it. I was, like we said earlier, I was a menace.
Yeah.
But they let me know that it was okay to cry. That if I needed to, like, step out or go into the counselor's office just to... Because things were happening so fast at that time. Like, I had parents got divorced, didn't know where we would want to live, who with, I mean.
Yeah.
And, in losing a pet or, things changing really rapidly and even, like, up and moving, changing schools, losing your friends and making new ones.
Yeah.
It was cool, the teachers, to be like, you know what, this is okay, let it out, sit here in the dark if you need to, as long as you need to.
And nowadays, obviously no shade on anyone that has a life change that causes either divorce or a significant change like in a household. But you going through that, right? Obviously, there's a lot of people going through that now, and it psychologically has such an effect on young kids when they go through it, and parents are just too busy in their stuff and fixing everything that sometimes that stuff gets overlooked. What are some of the things that you really struggled with, and how did you overcome that transition? And like, do you remember when the pain hurt? And do you remember when you said, this is the way it is, and it just gave you a sense of confidence because you had another life experience compared to other friends that you've had?
I think like mid-high school, because, the excuse is always, well, he acts up because I was acting up because of my parents' divorce.
Yeah.
And I was which kind of sneaks into how I am now. Like when you see me on camera or... I'm usually like pretty vibrant, colorful. Yeah. And it changed in high school because things got more serious and I had to be a bit of an adult in most situations because, not only was I older, but I also had like two brothers and a sister to take care of after as well, like because their father was a deadbeat. Mm-hmm. And, they didn't have anyone else around. And I did my best with my brother was in the military. So he wasn't there as much as, I'm sure he would have been, but, that helped me grow up a little also.
Yeah.
and to be a bit more responsible.
When you're a kid and you either your parents work double shifts or they're not home or any of those things, they make you learn how to either be more an adult, conversate a different way, but also like how to feed yourself.
Yeah.
And so like it's so funny because we recall, I used to make this for myself and that. What were some of the meals maybe that you made back then because you had to, right? Let's just say that you still make now. And you're like, man, I learned this when I was young. And your friends are like, really? You were making eggs when you were?
Yes.
They don't. A lot of people don't believe that, but sometimes you just have to. What were some of the foods or things that you had to do that you still have that with you today?
Eggs con weenie. It's
the people don't do that as much as they should because if you say it, they're like, "What?" People are just divas, man. It is a good dish.
Yeah, and you're missing out if you don't put make a burrito into it, or tortilla con weenie and cheese, or I would used to get I would toast some bread, get some butter, and put some cinnamon and sugar, make a little cinnamon toast.
So you had your food and your dessert.
Yeah, and then and the ultimate struggle meal was ketchup and mustard sandwich.
Explain.
Which, just exactly how it sounds. Just put ketchup and mustard in between two pieces of bread and just eat it.
Have you done that now?
No,
it's been a while.
It has been a long while.
What would you go heavy on? Was it the mustard or the ketchup?
Mustard. I'm a mustard man.
Got it. That's interesting.
Yeah. No,
that's a struggle meal.
It is.
People laugh about struggle meals now because I've heard syrup sandwich. And
how did I forget a syrup sandwich?
Yeah, and I feel like that falls in line with that.
It's funny because we had Smooth Vega on, and he brought up a syrup sandwich.
Yeah.
And struggle meals, which looking back, those kind of weren't struggle meals. We had the food in the fridge and. That's what we chose to eat.
Independent meals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Independent meals. That's what it was. And so growing up through that and all those lessons that you learned, let's go to your high school years. Mm-hmm. I imagine that you just being the kid that you were, boy, it gets amplified in high school because popularity comes in, girlfriends, you have more friends and everything. What did you go through to high school that makes Javier now? Because you said I can be a little bit loud, I can be a little bit brash at times because of how I grew up. Because I want to figure out it wasn't because of your parents' divorce. That's what people were trying to make that connection.
Yeah. But
obviously it's something else. So did it start in high school? Were you like you are kind of now on the Funky Panther?
A little bit. You can ask Tim and Chad, and it feels like I haven't really changed. I've changed a little. I'm 37 years old, so you kind of have to. But no, I think I grasped that identity in high school, and as old as I was getting, I think I was just becoming. Oh, your hormones get involved, and you want to impress girls and stuff like that. But I apart from trying to be popular, I wasn't, but I was just there. Just everybody knew who I was, and I just tried to have everybody like me. I didn't like it when nobody liked me.
And so, I guess looking back then and comparing it to now, what do you think some of your greatest strengths were back then and weaknesses? And do they exist now? Sometimes we say, well, I was shy then, I continue to be shy, things like that. But what were your strengths back then and what were your weaknesses and how do they compare to now?
Man, I'll say one weakness would be jealousy. And it'd be because, there would be times, the obvious, your friends are dating people that you liked and you were kind of just man, I tried to go for that, but it didn't work out. But strengths, I think I was just really as open as I kind of am right now. That's whenever it started all coming out. And so, you don't want to lie about too many things, but I think that getting to know myself and being vocal and open about who I was a great strength for me.
In high school and coming out of high school, okay, you're becoming a young adult. What were some of the biggest influences that helped you become who you are? Whether it could have been a movie, it could have been a book. It's funny because I'm watching all these rappers and stuff, and I'm listening to these people talk and on interviews. They bring up Scarface a lot, and I know it seems silly because you want deeper, more profound influences, but that's had a big influence on so many people. And so I'm just saying that to kind of trigger your mind. But what are some influences that kind of make who you are?
Man, Scarface, those last 2 years of high school, I was really It's funny that you say that.
You're like, it is Scarface.
Because, I mean, that's, you wanted that swagger. You wanted that, like, toughness. And even my best friend will tell you, like, even back in the day for my birthdays, he would give me Scarface stuff. And just, I want to say that carried me over too, but also, like, music did a good thing for me also. Like, at the time, Kanye West was coming out, and that senior year, like, everything kind of evolved around, like, Usher or Kanye, and, like, my swagger would change to, like, try to be smooth and still loud, and I wouldn't say flamboyant, but just kind of like my favorite rappers, like, try to see, like, and act how they were.
It's crazy when you say Usher and Kanye, and it's such a contrast. So because you were a fan of them, I'm going to ask you this. So Usher is about to do the Super Bowl halftime. Mm-hmm. Pretty big deal. His catalog is deep and wide. I mean, this dude is doing it, and he's done it for a long time. Kanye, being a disruptor, stepping into different industries and just being like, dude, the dude is talented, but he's gone through some things lately, right? Mm-hmm. He's obviously gone off the rails a few times with some statements and stuff. But how do those two guys sit with you now when you're looking at them? You're like, I used to be fans of them. Here's what they're going through. How does it speak to you now? How do you listen to them now, knowing how they grew, how they've become older men?
So, they say genius is close to insanity, right? Isn't that true? It's a very thin line. With Kanye, it's kind of like I don't want to say like a lesson learning story of what you shouldn't do. Yeah. Like, I mean, gain fame and then, like, think you can say things that you shouldn't say or have, like, the mentality that he has. But I think his openness and brashness is albeit a strength, it's still a weakness also, because you're showing people a little bit of your true colors. With Usher, man, it's just like, for him, it's always been smooth. It's always been smooth and cool, nice and slow. I mean, I say Usher and Kanye because, like, that was one of my best memories, like, out of high school. It was my first big memories was going to a show where Kanye performed. He opened for Usher.
Really?
Yeah. And so I thought it was the coolest thing. He brought out John Legend like 3 years before John Legend became big. It was the coolest thing. It was one of the best shows I'd ever been to.
Dude, that's a lineup right there. Those three. Yeah. That is amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. But no, I think the cool, collected, like, smoothness of Usher kind of just, like, made me want to, like, dress nicer, wear a big watch, a spinner. My buddy had a spinner ring, and we were like, let's go get chains, look cool, have our hats tilted like how he had it. It was pretty funny.
That was you in high school?
That was me after high school. Because I couldn't afford it at the time. Yeah. And then started working, and then I was able to, like, buy things that I wanted to have. And sure enough, you spend your money on dumb things, but looking back, it's like, you know what? I'm glad I did that. Yeah. It was a lot of fun, and I was able to, like, be myself with my best friend.
Okay, so during that time, you're changing. You're obviously trying to discover who you are, and it's heavily influenced by, the culture of, like, Usher and Kanye. What are some of the, let's just say, failures or challenges that you went through that time that really gave you some valuable lessons that you have today? Whether whatever it be, a job, quitting a certain way, you name it, dude. Yeah. But we all go through them, and they're somewhat embarrassing. But with enough time, that embarrassment becomes a lesson, and then it's funny to share. So, what's something that you've been through that's successful now? You found success in it.
Success. I mean, I guess, like, actually working and meeting people instead of just, like, working with my dad, because throughout high school, that's what I did. I worked with my dad at the time. Yeah. And I also worked, like, my first job was Pancho's Mexican Buffet. And then when I was a junior in high school, I worked at Mexican Inn. It taught me to be around people, that I didn't know. High school is one thing because you know everybody. Yeah. So, like, whenever I started working these other jobs or in retail, you were branching out and, like, speaking to people that you've never met. And, like, I know you're in sales and doing that stuff, but it's still, like, talking to people. Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of the openness in that.
Working at Ponchos. It's obviously it's a Mexican buffet restaurant. It's long gone, but at some point in the 90s, it was popping. Okay, so when you say Ponchos, everyone hates on it. But dude, everyone ate there whenever we were growing up around this area.
After church.
Yeah, for sure. So what are some of the things you learned in there? Because I always hear servers say, like, people are so rude and so difficult to work with. Everyone should work in the food industry at some point in their life because they gain certain things. And I don't know what they are. But do you know what they're talking about? Can you connect to that statement?
Man, I say getting humbled because, I was a busboy. I wasn't a server. I had to clean tables, mop floors, clean the restrooms at night. It was humbling, to say the least, having to clean people's mess. And then people you went to school, you were going to school with, watching you clean, and you're like, oh, I shouldn't be here doing this.
Yeah.
But, it goes away after a while, but you get used to it.
That embarrassment young is difficult.
It is.
Where did you find to be able to, a lot of people don't do jobs or don't gain these experiences because they're so prideful and embarrassed to do them. Did you struggle with that? And did you just say, I just have to? Or how did you overcome that? That seems like a hard thing for a young guy.
Man, I don't want to be like basic with my answer, but it just happened. I just decided, you know what? These people that I work with that are the same age that I am, go to different schools, they don't feel this way. Like, why care what other people think? You're working, you're making money. And then I carried that after whenever my brothers were in high school, and I'm like, hey, look, you can work any job you want. You should never be embarrassed of what you do, because at the end of the day, you're making money, and you're in the future, you're going to put food on the table. So, like, I could say that if I lost my job, that I could easily just go to like a buffet restaurant or like a Brahms, and I would get a job that same day until I found the next thing. But I think, you always never be ashamed of where you're going to work, because it's work at the end of the day.
Yeah,
it's not supposed to be glamorous.
What are some of the lesser known things about you? Maybe like a skill or talent that you have that you really don't showcase, but like, I know how to play frisbee golf really good, or I know how to spin a basketball on my finger. What's a talent? That's a hidden Javier talent. Man,
I'm a big fan of hip hop. That's really like my, I don't know, Tim he brags too much about it, but I think I know a good amount of hip hop, but I'm really good at like trivia, like really random trivia. I was in College Bowl whenever like I was going to TCC, and ended up going to Houston for like the state championship, and didn't win it, obviously, because there's so much
trivia?
more. Yeah, for trivia.
In hip hop, or like
no,
sports?
like everything, like all around trivia.
Yeah.
And so I think in high school they called it whiz quiz, but I didn't do it until I was in college, and I was with a team of friends, and then my professor at the time, Mike Nichols, a really good guy, he works at TCC Northwest, but he's like, hey, you're really good. How about you join the core team that's going to go to Houston? And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, hell yeah. I'll definitely do it. So, man, that's history. Like, I don't know. I love history. I love history and hip hop. That's just two of my favorite things.
Okay, well then let me try to draw some insight from this statement. Okay, so that way people watching this. So Andre 3000 just released an album.
Yes.
Okay, and to me it is the biggest bait and switch in music. Okay, like if you can, because has there been another huge transition like that? Like, was Kenny G ever a rapper, as well? Like, dude, so he went from hip hop lyrics, just hype music, and then this new album came out, and he's a flute guy now. How do you feel about that? Man,
I hadn't had a chance to listen to it. It came out yesterday.
It's really good in an elevator.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm joking.
You're listening to like Muzak. Man, I'll tell you what. I feel like, if it's all flute, it kind of plays into like a living meme of him. Like, you see him like in a Pied Piper outfit with a flute, and it seems like a very Andre 3000 thing for him.
Yeah.
Lyrically, he's one of the best, like him and Big Boy, what they did with Outkast.
Yeah.
I mean, I was bumping to Speaker Box and the Love Below, like on my way over here. And it's just funny. I'm going to give it a listen. I'll listen to it because anything Andre puts out is gold. Even like when he's featured on other songs, like with Anderson .Paak or like with anyone, he just puts out gold. And I guess, hey man, it's like what he said. It's like, what am I going to rap about? Getting a colonoscopy?
That's true. And it's such a big transition. It's different. I feel like I'm about to see a bunch of cats with flutes.
Hey,
you know what I mean? It's
flutes or recorders.
I was going to bring one today because I made a meme with a flute by a washer, because he does his laundry and he plays the flute in the alley. He had an interview with GQ, and that making transitions like that is very difficult because something defines you so much, and then life happens and you mature or you change.
I think it's an evolution, though.
Yeah.
You evolve. I mean, your sound, it's like with music in general also. You saw it with Kanye. He kind of evolved through those first 3 albums, went to 808s and Heartbreak, and then his sound just changed. And I think it's just like, not just with music, it's like with us as humans. You can't stay at a constant. You have to just evolve. As you get older, you evolve. And if you stop learning, that's the day you die. That's how it is.
And so with that being said, what's a big transition that you've had in your life that was like the biggest switch, like your evolution? What's the old Javier to the new Javier? What's some big changes that you've been through?
Man, therapy.
Yeah.
Therapy is a huge thing because, as emotional and as open as I was with like who I was, I still wasn't fully open until like you hit a breaking point. And once you hit that breaking point, it's either you sink or swim, and sinking was a huge option. Like, I mean, it's only when you're at that breaking point that you realize you need help. And so I think after that first session that I had, it evolved from counselors to therapy, and the counselor, which is, as a matter of fact, she's up here. She was my first counselor I spoke to. And just that first session was just a weight off my shoulders.
So for Latinos, and obviously there are other communities, but speaking for Latinos, it's a very hard thing to take. Like, our moms and dads, for the most part, don't understand it unless they grew up with privilege and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But, we grew up, we didn't have a lot of money. Getting help, mental health was not the case when I was young. It's something very new and being popularized now. And so this might help someone. This might help a parent or something. But how did you get into it? How did your parents, if you told them, how did they respond to it? And how did it become something that you said, I need this, like I need to go to the gym or something like that?
Well, I mean, like you said, it wasn't really readily available to us. Being Latino, or like not having, you were thinking that it would cost like a lot of money to try to seek help. But I think it's still, like you were saying, like in the Latino community, it's kind of hard because your parents are old school and they're tough and they keep everything in, and they don't tell your kids I love you only until they're 5, and then they need to toughen up. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of like a thing for me. My dad worked all the time, and he was just, I wouldn't say like closed off emotionally, which I kind of feel like, looking back, I think he's been working since he was 6 years old on a farm, and came over here when he was 16. It was just a bunch of things, but I think it's harder for us as Latinos. And I think my mom, like whenever I told her about therapy, she first the worry happens. It's like, well, what's wrong, mijo? Like, what can I do? How can I help? But like whenever when I had my first consultation and I told my dad, and he kind of like brushed it over, oh, well, somebody's coming in for an estimate, blah, blah, blah. It was funny because I was like, hey, he's like, I got to go. I got an appointment. I lied. I was like, I got an appointment with a doctor. And he's like, Saturday? What kind of doctor is he?
My knee hurts.
And I was like, no, I'm going to speak to a counselor. And then he just like stopped, thought, and then he's like, change the subject.
Yeah.
Change the subject. It just,
What's your relationship with your dad like? And, okay, think about it, but let me preface it with this. do y'all say, I love you, Dad,
No.
I love you, son?
No.
And if, okay, that's the case, when has he or when have you, can you like count it?
Yeah. The last time he writes it in letters, obviously for Christmas, gives us, hey, I love you, son, whatever. But the last time that I can think of where he told me he loved me, it had to be like in '02. My younger brother, because I got a big family. I have a brother and sister that live in Mexico, and my brother was really sick at the time, and he was really down and out. And he said, "I love you." Mm-hmm. I didn't know how to respond to that. I'm pretty sure I said, when you're at church, and I was like, and you. That's what I told him. Yeah, but it was over the phone, and I got off the phone, and I'm like, what the hell was that? Like, that was so weird. And I was in my feelings. It was 2010, and I remember driving at the girl that I was dating, her house at the time, and I was feeling depressed. And it was my birthday, and I called him, and I was like, hey, thank you for everything you've done, for me, and for bringing me into this world. I love you. And he same, like, it kind of felt like he's like, yeah, man, yeah.
Hey,
okay.
Dad, thanks. That one time you said, I love you, thank you for that. No. And it's so crazy because it's so weird, but I'm obviously breaking that curse or that, whatever you want to call it.
Break the cycle.
I have to, and it's a very difficult thing. My wife had to help me do it. It's not natural for me, but it is now with my wife and my daughter. But man, my dad told me that he loved me once, and I was like, I was about to die. Like, I had gotten in a really bad car wreck, and my dad gave me a plug. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I struggle with that. Never got any kind of direction on that or how it has developed me. But I just felt like, I was like, I'm gonna ask Javier because my dad worked a lot.
Yeah.
He farmed and he came over here. He's about 17 years old, and he started a new life over here. Very hard, cold man. Great provider and everything, but it's just a different time that he grew up in, and that's the way things were done. What are you doing different when it comes to loving someone and showing that love to someone else now, based on what you've learned, like from your mom and dad?
Man, so here with this relationship, now I'm trying to make work less in my life, like, not have that brought into my life as much. And I tell my girlfriend I love her all the time. Like, every time we get off the phone, I tell her I love her. Even if we're pissed at each other, we say I love you. Mm-hmm. Because you never know. You don't know. And so I think I'm being more open with saying that, or like trying to take time away from work to be with her, which even like now we're both working so much. And she brought it up last night. She's like, we haven't had a chance to like hang out and be together.
Yeah.
Let's not do anything next Friday. I was like, yeah, we need our time together. And I think from this relationship to my last one, which I didn't find out until later, the whole reason why she broke up with me is because she told a friend of mine, she's like, I don't want to compete with his dad. He was always working, and my ex at the time was working for like the Dallas Tourism Bureau. She was always traveling, and she's like, hey, I got this hotel room in this city. Let's go, let's explore the city. And I'm like, I can't. I got to work. I don't have that kind of time off. And it's changed with this go round, thankfully. And I'm in a better spot. I'm a better position, and I love this woman. And I'm taking more time out to like do weekend trips or like go places I'd never thought. I hate flying, period. But like try new things. So being more open with love and breaking that cycle that I had is a big thing for me.
It's so, people here, like, with work and being committed to work, and for you it's even more difficult because your dad's attached to it. And so it's like it consumes you personally and professionally. And you're saying like, man, I need to pull back from it, focus more on me and the relationships around me. You realize that's a difficult thing for people to do, because you kind of have to set yourself up to be able to do that. Some people will have to work hard for the rest of their lives. There's a meme where a guy's working hard. He's like, why? It's hot. He's sweating. And then the person's like, why are you out here working? It's so hot. Because I have to. And he goes, I don't have a choice. And do you realize you having that choice is such a blessing, first and foremost? How difficult is it every day to make that decision still? And the reason I ask is because I don't want people to think that that's easy. Like, it requires work to say, I'm not going to do work, because it's just so much a part of our lives. How do you deal with that every day?
Man, I'm still struggling with it. Even right now, my dad's at work. My dad gets there like early, 6 or 7 a.m. He gets home like around 10 or 11 o'clock at night.
Man,
it's hard for him to turn off.
Do you ever wish like your dad could get there where he could say, I'm going to cut it off and be more present outside of work?
He does not need to work.
There you go.
He has 2 businesses, and he has another shop he opened, a temporary shop, and man, this is our best year. Even my mom says that, man, do not be like your dad. Do not work late. Spend your time, enjoy yourself. But my dad won't shut off. He just he doesn't need to.
You know, it defines him.
It does.
I mean, you think about this. Okay, you're creative. You have friends. You're an explorer. You play music. You play the flute. Whatever. My dad is, I think, very similar to maybe your dad. I'm making that assumption, but let's just go with it. That's what defines him. When you pull him away from what defines him, who are they?
Yeah.
In conversation, in friendship, like they've never experienced that. Nothing but respect for my dad, but I cannot count I can't count his friends. Like he does, like he is consumed by work and has been 30 plus years. Like that's what he does. And I imagine that he's probably scared to pull away from it. What do you think? How do you think your dad deals? Obviously being in it, not being able to pull away, does that hold some truth, you think?
It does. I think, again, your dad and my dad are pretty similar. Like, even I try to think of like his friends, and I know there are people he meets like from work, and he meets like professionals and people that have money and stuff like that.
My dad has that.
And
but that's different.
It's different.
That's not
It's not the same. No. It's not like me and my best friends, or me and the boys, or it's completely not the same.
I don't think my dad has someone to say, you know what, I'm dealing with this with my wife. What did you do? Like, I cannot picture my dad doing that with anyone my entire life.
I don't think he does. At 63 or 62 years old, I don't think he has somebody like that.
65's coming.
Yeah.
Does he? I mean, because my dad is close to retiring too. I think he's like 62 or something. Yeah. He's almost 65, and I'm worried. Like, when I was young, he played basketball a lot. Every day after school, and that's why I love basketball. And, don't get me on the court. I'm slow, I'm broken, but I will still talk a good game.
Don't let these shoes fool you. They're just for show.
Yeah, and so he had that sense of community back then. But looking back, it was still just basketball. Yeah. Like, he could not break away from that and establish relationships in his life. And I don't know. I mean, for sure, I have moved past that. Mm-hmm. Do you encourage your dad in any way to kind of just branch out, or you just let him be? Like, I just have that time.
I let him be. Yeah. And it's funny because we have 2 relationships: a work relationship and just like our father and son.
Yeah.
The good thing is now, later on in life, he leaves work at work. He doesn't bring it at home. He doesn't get upset with me when we're out, or you didn't do this right. This is what guy called, and blah blah blah. And now he's seen. Actually, I think now it's because I'm in a relationship where I care and I want something to happen out of it. Start a family, and he sees that, and he's like, okay, I'll let him be with that. He's growing up. 37 is growing up. And he just leaves that alone. Yeah. He's a different person. I hate to say it, and my girlfriend, as much as I complain about that man to my girlfriend, my girlfriend's like, he's just 2 different people. You tell me what he does at work, and whenever we're out, he's a different person, and he's charming and nice. And everyone will say that about my dad. He's a charming, nice person. I saw your dad at Neiman's, and I was shopping with him. I'm like, oh, cool, great. I wish I can do that too. But it's a tale of 2 dads, essentially.
What's one of the best memories of your dad? I'll give you a second to think, because I feel like there's a connection here with my dad. We were talking once, and he told me, he said, Sam, you have so much to talk about. Because I always try, I want to have great conversations with my dad, but my dad isn't about conversation. Yeah, so I'm kind of taking the lead on it. Mm-hmm. And then if he says one sentence, it's like, yeah, and I'll just piggyback on it, and I'll make something of it. But one time he goes, you know a lot about a lot of stuff, and you're really good at talking. And that was it. But it stuck with me. Like, I felt like, okay, cool. Like, I'm not boring my dad.
I'm very glad that he told you that. Yeah. I'm very glad that you got something like that. I can't think of a time where it's funny. He'll have like his old church friends and their kids would come to the shop, and he's like, well, your dad says you have a podcast, you have a show. Like, how's that going? And it's funny. I'm like, how come you don't tell me, like, ask me, like, whenever we won best of, I'm like, Dad, we won best of. He's like, yeah, but is it making you money? And I'm like, okay. Yeah. Jeez, Dad, I'm sorry.
You expected that.
And I just want one. I'm proud of you. And your dad, I'm very, like, hearing that he said that you have a lot to say, giving you a bit of praise. That, like, for me, it would blow doors wide open. And as much as I want to be like, Dad, can't you just be, like, supportive for what? Yeah. It's not about cars. Because my dad, he loves shoes and watches.
Yeah.
And growing up poor, on a farm with a big family, did not, like, get to afford this kind of stuff. Yeah, now that he's older, he's like, I buy things now because I can, and I didn't get to whenever I was younger. But I just want him to say, Javier, I'm proud of you, Thank you for working as hard as you do. You screw up sometimes, but I still love you, and I just wish you could. I just want you to know I'm proud.
Yeah.
That would blow doors wide open.
That's interesting. I don't know. Well, thank you for being open about your dad, and Absolutely. It obviously allowed me to kind of share some.
It's a big thing. It's a lot of like stuff I talked about with therapy. So
for sure. Yeah. So you're one of 3 that make up the Funky Panther podcast. Y'all been around for how many years now?
We are going into our 4th year.
This is year 4. Y'all been voted best of, I think it was 3 years consecutively or something. Y'all skipped a year?
I think, so the first year we won editors and Reader's Choice for Forward Weekly. Yeah. And, you have your little write-up whenever you win, which is a perfect description of who we were or who we are.
Yeah.
Because we're still changing as a collective, as like a 3-man pod. But, we also got Fort Worth Magazine's Reader's Choice. I think we got it 3 times also. And this past year, we did get Reader's Choice for Fort Worth Magazine. But the RAP guys got Reader's Choice this year on the weekly, and of course Andrew won 2 years, which I feel kind of bad about. So all props to Andrew, from the Fort Worth Roots podcast, but like the RAP guys and the TFCI guys, they're like, we got to take it from the Funky Panther, and I'm like, it's not us guys, it's Andrew. You need to take it from him. Like, I don't know why
he's just kind of like coming under the radar, but he's there. Like,
I think after Johnny. After they won, and I'm like, dude, now you got to go for editors. You got to get that. And he's like, nah, I don't want to take that from Andrew. He's been so open and help and loving with us. And I'm like, how about me, man? I've been really cool with you guys too, jerk. But it's cool. The awards now, it's kind of like, well, if we win, we win. If we don't, it's fine. We still love what we're doing.
Yeah, So what inspired y'all to start the podcast and collaborate? Because 3 is hard.
Yeah.
So what caused it? What prompted y'all to start it, and obviously to come up with the Funky Panther podcast name?
Started with actually I think 5 or 6 people when we first began. When we first started recording, and it was terrible. It was like, I like telling people, first 10 episodes, skip those. Listen to everything else after that.
Yeah.
Because we worked our way down to 4, and our friend Jesus moved to Egypt, which, much love to that man. But it got down to 3. It happened 9 years ago. The boys, I was working in Colorado at the time. The boys came to Colorado to visit me and also explore. Tim and Chad had a funny conversation where somebody came up to him and said, y'all are laughing a lot. I want to know what's so funny. I want to be a part of the conversation. They told him the story, and the guy's like, okay. So he just walked away, and then the conversation began like, what are we going to call ourselves? Like, let's do a podcast. I think like we need to make it like being with your friends. And we still try to do that to this day. And even like some of our friends are like, it feels like I'm there and I'm having a conversation with you guys. But it started, we called ourselves the Traces Podcast because it's a little collective that Chad had in high school. And
the Tres Leches? What'd you say?
Traces. He does
the Traces.
Like it's the German 3 he does. God. It's the, like, I don't know why.
It sounded like Tres Leches.
Tres Leches.
Same thing. In essence, we're talking about the same thing.
There's a lot of leche there. But, the night we started episode 1, we recorded like, I think 2 or 3 times. And what are we going to call ourselves? And then the idea just, well, we're Funky Town and we're Panther City. So let's go ahead and bridge the names together. Oh, yeah. And we looked, we're like, there's nothing called the Funky Panther. Let's call ourselves the Funky Panther. And I remember this episode 2, I think I said, hey, let's just yell Funky Panther when we start recording. And then we'll, play the intro music. And then it kind of just evolved to I'm Chad, I'm Javier, and I'm Tim. And we are, it's kind of like also a mix of like Bill and Ted. It's like, we are Wild Stallions. And it kind of just like worked and evolved its way to that. So
having a podcast with several people is difficult.
Yes.
Each host brings their like unique characteristics. How would you describe each of y'all and what y'all bring to the show?
This was easy because we all have mugs with like who we are on the show. So Chad's the brains. Chad, like, he very meticulous with PowerPoint, and he like has like spreadsheets for the show, and we had bullet points where we would prepare. He's the brains. Tim's the producer. He like handles everything, and he's the technical wizard when it comes to the sound, the soundboards, like, and I'm just the wild card. That's the only thing I bring to the table. I'm just like the guy who's like making the off the wall comment, which you kind of have to have if you got like 3 people.
What are some of the biggest lessons you learned from podcasting, communication, and like working with others?
I think it's there's a lot of smart, great professional people here in Fort Worth. I didn't feel that. I didn't know if we didn't have this podcast, I would not have known a single thing about the city. I would not know, like, we had so many artists, musicians, restaurateurs that were pretty cool people, and brewmasters. It just like opened up my world and our world to these other things. I think it's a huge, I don't know where I'd be in life without this show.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'd be.
You got a quick memory, a good, one of the best memories, maybe?
Of the podcast?
Yeah, being on the pod. Or whatever, like preparing for a show or meeting someone.
I think, Teresa from the Fort Worth Library and Amplify 817 has been a huge help in us as a podcast. And she recognized us and said, hey, got these artists. We want to do a showcase called Amplify 817 Showcase. We want you guys to be a part of it, and we want you to interview a couple of artists. And that was a jump-off point to getting an invite to go record at South by Southwest for Visit Fort Worth, and like going to the annual meeting, which this past year, thankfully, we were a part of, like recording a podcast as people walked into, which we had I think 2 other. There was a 3 setups period, but we were the one where you had to go up the escalator and we would pull people in and interview them. And so that's a huge life-changing thing.
Very good. I got 5 questions to ask you to finish the show. They don't have to be long answers. This is just how you feel, what you know, what you've been through. Here's the first one. What's the key to happiness for you?
Key to happiness is love. Because if you don't have love in your life, then what's the point of living?
What do you enjoy doing in your free time?
Free time, I like spending time with my dog and cats, and being with them, and just being with my girlfriend. Just, being with the loved ones and family.
What do you think makes a good friend?
Openness. I think openness and also being at their corner. Kind of terrible example. The stuff that happened with the other boys, and I had to have my boys back. And, it's just being there for them, for whatever they're going through. And, things are way better now. Our friendship literally was great. It kind of dipped, and then it just got better.
Got it.
So, good stuff.
What are you most proud of in your life so far?
I'm still alive. I think that's the thing I'm most proud of. That's as dark as it sounds. I think being here, period, is like, that's what I think.
If you're alive, you ain't finished.
That's right.
What do you hope to achieve in the future?
Family. I hope to have kids. I really want. I know I'm old. Thank goodness. It's different for men, unfortunately, but I want a family. I think I will be ultimately successful and happy once I have a family. And honestly, if it didn't work out that way, as long as I'm with somebody that loves me, Tammy, that's all that matters. I just want to be loved.
Any final thought, question, or complaint before we go?
Man, don't try to pander out to people. I think people, and I did this when I was in high school, I acted a certain way just to try to get the attention of people, and I guess I still do that now. I don't know. But I think, trying to be fake for the sake of being fake, or, trying to impress someone else or put down people for that reason, I think that's something that people shouldn't do. I shouldn't do. I know I've done it in the past, but you're a better person if you're yourself.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Well, Javier, thank you so much for coming on, sitting down with me. I think it was a great conversation. Thank you for your openness, and I enjoyed it, man.
I could have done this for another hour.
Yeah.
I think I would love to come back, and I think I'm glad to be a part of the people that you've interviewed, and I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate your friendship, and for being an all-around great person for the podcast community. Thank you so much for doing what you do and showing love and support to the entire Pod Squad.
Man, thank you for saying that. Guys, if you've enjoyed today's episode, thank you so much. Don't forget, subscribe and like. Do the same for the Funky Panther, and everything Javier and the Funky Panther, they will be a description below. And thank y'all for tuning in. We'll see y'all on the next one. Peace.